Chapter 1, Peak Performance. Game 6, NBA Finals, June 1997. Athletic achievement, like the achievement of the heroes and gods of Greece, is the momentary attainment of perfect form. A great play is a revelation. The curtains of ordinary life part, and perfection flashes for an instant before the eye. Michael Novak, The Joy of Sports. June 13, 1997, United Center, Chicago, Illinois. Game 6 of the NBA Finals between the Utah Jazz and the Chicago Bulls. A win would give the Bulls their 5th NBA championship in 7 years. As the orthopedic surgeon covering the game for Chicago, I was responsible for evaluating our players and taking care of any serious injuries. I was not expected to show up until 1 hour before game time, but I was there 2 hours early. I wanted to savor and soak up every moment. Although a team physician for less than a year, I had long been a serious fan, dedicated enough to share season tickets. Having been in practice in the Chicago area for more than 20 years, I'd experienced the Bulls' lean years. So along with everyone else in the city, I was caught up by Bulls fever. I took a seat in the stands before almost any of the 24,000-plus frenzied fans started making their way into the arena. It was oddly quiet. But someone else was also there, another early arrival, who was sitting further along the row, and he was literally practicing his heckling. He'd intone over and over in a deep, hoarse voice that would become even more ragged as the game went on. "Go back to Utah! Go back to Utah! Go back!" Playoff pressure. The Jazz were on the court practicing, and with 2 hours to go before the starting buzzer, they were hitting 90% of their shots. Based on that performance, my stomach began churning. I didn't think the Bulls had a chance. As game time approached, though, the percentage of shots the Jazz players were making had begun to diminish significantly. Clang, clang. Even for Utah, who had already been NBA Finals battle-tested, the tension was clearly having an effect. Once, before another playoff game, I asked Bill Wennington, the Bulls' 7-foot center, about the pressure of performing in the playoffs and how it affects a player. His response was that the intensity level increases enormously, and under the pressure, it's very easy to tighten up and not play your regular game. You need to have been through it. He added that when he's on court during playoffs and has a shot, he thinks to himself, "I'm on a playground," not, "I must make the shot." In short, you have to be relaxed. Even the most talented team may not win if they haven't had enough playoff experience. Tip-off time was approaching. The players were taking their final pregame practice jump shots. A boisterous crowd, a sea of red and black Bulls jerseys and jackets, had already filled the arena. The security guards had taken their positions and were scanning the crowd. Now the announcers and official scorers entered, along with the 3 referees, Joey Crawford, Steve Javie, and Bennett Salvatore, each a well-respected veteran. They needed to be, because of the badgering they knew they were going to get from the 2 strong-willed opposing coaches. Searchlights were crisscrossing every corner of the arena, while the scoreboard was filled with video clips of Michael Jordan's highlight dunks. The air was beginning to fill with a pungent aroma of free-flowing beer, mixed with the distinct fragrance of hot dogs and pizza. Heart-pounding music was blasting, while mascot Benny the Bull, whom I'd once had to bench with a sprained ankle, seemed to be in his own world while practicing his backflips. Suddenly, it was pitch black. The crowd grew silent with anticipation. Then, with spotlights focused on the Bulls' starting 5, and with the Alan Parsons Project's Sirius slowly building in the background, announcer Ray Clay, in his familiar gravelly voice, shouted, "And now, the starting lineup for your Chicago Bulls." In the intense excitement of this moment, I felt so many emotions at once: joy, excitement, tension, apprehension, celebration, as if I were at my wedding or a religious revival meeting. Jerry Sloan comes home. We were ahead in the series 3-2, and we needed one more win to clinch the title. The consensus among the experts was that the Jazz were as talented and as well coached as the Bulls. Their point guard, John Stockton, in 1996 had been named one of the 50 greatest players in NBA history. To add to the storyline of the game, Jerry Sloan, now the head coach of the Utah Jazz, had once been a star player for the Chicago Bulls and the first retired jersey in Bulls franchise history. Number 4, which hung from the rafters, belonged to him. Also, Utah's forward, Karl Malone, had just been voted most valuable player in the league by a panel of sports writers, narrowly beating out Michael Jordan. Imagine what effect that had on Michael. Utah broke into a quick lead, and throughout the first 3 quarters, the Bulls continually tried to claw back, but just could not seem to get untracked. The Jazz were an admirable team, very disciplined. Plus, they had the added incentive of the game being a must-win for them. The main thing keeping us within striking distance was Michael Jordan's gutsy performance. I sat on the players' bench behind Phil Jackson and next to team internist Jeff Weinberg and John Capps, one of Michael's security guards. My adrenaline was flowing in overdrive. Trying to control my nervousness, I limited my conversation and actions to an occasional cheer, high five, or groan. As usual, Phil displayed a consistently high level of energy throughout the game, constantly badgering the referees. He alternated between a stern, "you must be kidding" look and a glower. Occasionally he would roar, "What are you thinking? That was an obvious foul." During a timeout, the players stood around Phil in a circle, and I could see the names he had written on his clipboard: MJ, Pip, Harp, SK, TK. Arrows were pointing to designated spots on the court so the players could see their assignments in case Phil couldn't be heard over the crowd noise. Even so, he emphatically barked out his orders. Michael Jordan's coach at the University of North Carolina, Dean Smith, was known frequently to say, "Don't you just love these close games?" "Not tonight, Dean. The emotional intensity with so much at stake was staggering. This was more like going through a cardiac stress test, a heart-thumping, chest-expanding effort with results that wouldn't be known until it was over. Even after a long season, I still wasn't used to the ebb and flow of the game, and even the nachos with extra jalapenos I'd purchased at halftime didn't calm me down. At least my previous experience in the operating room and with the Chicago White Sox helped me to be able to compartmentalize my emotions. If one of the players needed treatment, I knew I'd be able to immediately put on my objective medical hat. But while watching this game, I was as crazed as anyone. At the beginning of the fourth quarter, Phil Jackson admonished the team, "You have no momentum. Increase your intensity." Right on cue, with Michael Jordan on the bench, Scottie Pippen hit 2 free throws, followed by a 2-point basket by Steve Kerr. When Scottie and Steve both hit threes, resulting in a Bulls 10-0 run, I took my first deep breath of the night. While watching the game, I reflected on how a team's fortunes could turn on a dime or a twisted ankle. During the past year, I'd been involved in the treatment of well-documented injuries to Dennis Rodman, Tony Kukoc, Luke Longley, and Bill Wennington, among others. Unfortunately, Bill's trauma had proven to be severe enough to keep him off this year's playoff roster. Being exquisitely aware of each player's injury history, I was watching carefully for any signs of a drop-off in performance that would require medical intervention, with special attention on Scottie Pippen. He was playing a dominant game in which he and Michael scored most of the points for the Bulls, but he was playing with a foot injury he'd sustained earlier in the playoffs. After the season was over, Dr. William Hamilton and I would eventually perform surgery on this damaged foot, but tonight he played brilliantly, willing away what appeared to be intense pain. I was also keeping a close eye on Michael Jordan. Only 2 days earlier, Michael had played the famous flu game in Utah, which my partner Ira Kornblatt had covered. The image of Scottie Pippen holding up a physically drained Michael Jordan is unforgettable. In what some considered to be the greatest performance of his career that night in Utah, Michael recorded an astonishing 38 points. On this night, I scrutinized Michael closely for any signs of weariness. The upshot, he looked like a man among boys on the court and scored 39 points. With the clock winding down, Utah's Byron Russell hit a three-pointer to tie the game at 86. During the Bulls' last time out, even with the crowd's thunderous noise, I managed to hear Michael Jordan say to Steve Kerr, "Be ready." In the heat of the battle, Michael knew just what to expect. He knew he was going to be double-teamed, leaving Steve wide open. That is exactly what happened. A storybook finish. When Michael took the inbound pass, two Utah defenders, knowing that he was too quick for one person to guard, immediately surrounded him. Then right on cue, Michael lobbed the ball over to Steve, who was alone at the top of the circle. With only 5 seconds left, Steve shot a high-arching 15-foot jumper that hit nothing but the bottom of the net. No board, no rim, just net. It was the winning basket, and it sent everyone in the United Center into a frenzy. It was absolutely a storybook finish, stunningly predicted by Michael Jordan. Steve had not played well during the finals, but after that basket, all was forgotten. He became an instant hero. Amazingly, the entire season came down to those last few seconds. And after all, isn't that every kid's dream, to hit the winning basket in a championship game? After the game, in his wonderful self-effacing way, Steve apologized for his late arrival in the media room, saying he hadn't been sure where it was located, his way of saying that the only players ever invited to go there were the superstars. Steve went on to describe what had happened in the huddle during the last time out. He said that Michael had told him he was too nervous to take the shot because he didn't feel comfortable in these situations, and asked Steve to please take it for him. Delivered with a straight face, this hilarious comment brought the house down, with Michael laughing hysterically along with everyone else. In fact, Michael Jordan had dominated the game. Post-game celebration. The post-game celebration was pure exhilaration. All 24,544 screaming fans were up on their feet, their cheers a deafening roar. Complete strangers were hugging each other. It was high fives all around. Security quickly roped off the court to keep the exuberant fans away from the players. Confetti showered down from the ceiling in celebration. Streamers were everywhere. All the Bulls players were in a tight circle hugging each other. A shocked, dejected Jazz team was now slowly trudging to their locker room. No one else in the stadium dared depart. Bulls general manager Jerry Krause was hugging Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan. Then Michael leaped onto the media table, clapping and cheering. Eric Helland, the strength and conditioning coach, shared a congratulatory hug with me as he said, "Remember this moment forever, Doc. It's so special." The Bulls massage therapist, Michelle Montgomery, said, "I'm going weak in the knees." I gave high fives to Steve Kerr, Judd Buechler, and Brian Williams. I scooped up some of the confetti into my pocket to save as a memento and headed to the locker room where the Bulls were already indulging in a raucous celebration. Mum champagne was being sprayed everywhere and on everyone. I'd already taken off my sports coat, having been warned by Bill Wennington that it would otherwise get destroyed. It was a full-fledged mob scene. Whole cases of Miller Genuine Draft were disappearing. Senator Luke Longley's parents had flown in from Australia to celebrate with him. Someone yelled out that President Clinton was on the telephone, and Scottie Pippen quipped, "I've already talked to him." I told Scottie what courage I thought he'd shown by playing despite his painful foot injury. He responded with a shy, appreciative grin. With several members of the media, we reminisced about this otherworldly championship season. I even held Michael's series MVP trophy, hoping to feel its magic rub off on me. I wanted this moment to go on forever. So how did a 55-year-old orthopedic surgeon find himself happily soaked to the skin with champagne in a cramped locker room at the United Center in Chicago, packed with euphoric Chicago Bulls players and unhinged well-wishers? It began in the 1940s and 50s in the then provincial town of Houston, Texas.